let's do it. We're continuing Unit 9 of the Moreno units on Shmita. Unit 9 for the Menucha of surname Dangar Sumos Matifiori. We've been learning about the question of what are the proper uses of Pirot Shvi'it. The order actually goes like this. In Unit 8, we peruse different understandings of why we need to share the Pirot Shvi'it. Is it eating off Hashem, off of Hashem's table, as it were? Or are we sharing, or is it the Kedusha model or the Kiddush model, right? The congregational understanding or the Kedusha understanding, reading from Hashem's hand. There's one aspect, and the other aspect is the mitzvah of eating Shvit. There is such a mitzvah. In this unit, we're going to talk about not eating, but other uses that are not necessarily eating. And in 10, we're going to deal with wasting. So that's the order of things. The way it works is we have 8 is the very mitzvah of eating. Here it's things that are not only strictly eating, and 10 will be wasting. And then 12 and 13 will be schora, selling and commerce bichlal, with commercial l'chulei. B'seder. So it says in the pasuk, the pasuk says, wait, I'm in the wrong unit, aren't I? Whoops, sorry. I'm like, wait a minute, this is the wrong quote. Sorry, I opened the wrong, I referenced the wrong page here. Thinking this is not how Unit 9 starts, is it? Where are we? That one? Yes, now we're in the right one, right? Okay, so pasuk says, "V'ayta Shabbat haaretz lachem le'ochla." Right? So on the one hand, the primary use is le'ochla. On the other hand, it could have said "V'ayta Shabbat haaretz le'ochla." Why does it say lachem? So we have a parallel thing when it comes to Yantiv. On Yantiv, right? On Yantiv it says achasher ya'aseh lechol nefesh, achasher ya'achel lechol nefesh hu levado ya'aseh lachem. So we learn from here, right, that you're allowed la'asot. Any melacha it takes to reach achila, and there's another criteria of lachem. So, for example, am I allowed to light candles on Yantiv to add light in the room? The answer is yes. It's not for the purpose of eating. I learned that from the word lachem. Similarly, we have as it applies to Shmita, sorry, that's the Yantiv. V'ayta Shabbat haaretz lachem le'ochla. So it's not only achila, it's also lachem. So it kind of has both aspects. Now, Gemara. So the Gemara discusses what are the parameters of this heter. The Gemara discuss. The Mishnah here says a very interesting thing about buying Shmita, buying Arbat Minim after Shmita or during Shmita, when the Trogim will be Kadosh. The Gemara says, the Mishnah talks about the Trogim being Kadosh, and the Gemara says, wait, what about the Lulav? Is the Lulav Kadosh? Now, why would the Lulav be Kadosh? What use do you have out of a Lulav? Two uses you might have out of a Lulav. Any ideas?
The
schach. So schach has to do with before Hanukkah, and we're going to mention this again later on. The question of things that are used for a mitzvah is not really considered a hana. So, but I will accept that if we won't say schach, we will say it could be used for shade, right? And it could be used so like this. You have wood that could be used for this example for shade, right? Not schach in the halachic sense, because halacha makes it complicated, but schach in the simple Hebrew sense of sikuch, right? Of shading.
Covering.
Shade. Okay, what else? What else?
To sweep up chametz, bedikat chametz.
That's right, for sweeping. I mean, we think of it only sweeping for bedikat chametz, but they in their days, right? They would use it for any sweeping, right? More broadly. Very good. One more option I'd raise.
But for sweeping, aren't you reducing the kedusha?
Oh, that's a good question. We're going to get back to that one. So remember Reb Chaim's question. It's a good point, but I want to discuss it later on when we get to the. It's a fair point, because we're gonna remember it for later on. A third option that's even more reductive of the kedusha, I might say.
To support for something, like if you take it as a center stick to support the plant, but that's again you're reducing in kedusha.
Oh, so I'd say generally speaking, using the wood as wood, right? I mean, I guess you have to take a step back and say, forget the lulav. What about a bookcase? I want to chop some wood and use it to make a bookcase. Is the bookcase kadosh b'kedushat shvit? That's the question. I'm just saying.
No.
There's a point there, right? Is worth. So one use of the wood would be for the wood. Another use of the wood, right, for the wood for shading, for building, for whatever. That's one thing. The other is use for wood in a way that's more using the wood as a tool, right, for sweeping. And what else do you use wood for? Lumber, timber, burning, right? Burning, cooking, right? You can have other uses of
heating,
right? You can use it for the heating or cooking. So let's see. The question, the Gemara says, what about? The Gemara starts with saying that the Gemara says, all right. So the etrog is, step back. The etrog is kadosh. What about the lulav? Would the lulav also be kadosh? As the Gemara, l'chora the lulav sim be'almahu v'tzim ein ben mishum kedushat shvit. The Tanya. Leikanim ועלי גפנים שגיבבן לחובה על פני השדה, לקטן לאכילה, יש בהם משום קדושת שביעית, לקטן לעצים, אין בהם משום קדושת שביעית. So if you have leikanim, right, you have עלי גפנים, you have right, the grape leaves. Grape leaves are edible, but most people don't bother picking them and eating them. So if you collect them as food, they have kedushat shvit. If you collect them as etzim, which I'm not going to define yet at the moment, if you collect them as etzim, it's for the wood that's in them, they do not have kedushat shvit. Right. So first of all, we already learned something that is edible, but is not normally picked as food by most people. Will only have kedushat shvit if it's picked for the food aspect of it, right? To be used as food. All right. But what about if it's picked for etzim? So forget that for the moment. I want to focus on the second part. If it's collected as for the wood that's in it, is that kedushat shvit? Shaniatam da'amalka lachem leochla, lachem dumya de leochla, mishana uviuro shava. Yatsu etzim. So the wood we're talking about here is to make a fire so you can cook. And when you pick leaves, why do you pick leaves for the fire? To start the fire. They're starters of the fire. So what do? You start the fire, but then you have the real wood that burns and you cook on. So the starter you don't get hana from directly. You'll get the hana later on. Right, it'll start your fire, but you're not getting any hanat goof from it. Right, it's only something the derivative of you'll get. And here we have an important definition, which is gonna lead us for a very long time. We're going to be dealing with this. Hanatan uvilan shava. What is hanatan uvilan shava? The simple definition is you get pleasure as you destroy it. Just like what else do you get pleasure out of as you destroy it?
Oil.
Your food.
Oil.
Food, right? You bite into an apple, you effectively destroy that apple, right? But that's the way you enjoy the apple, right? This goes back. There you go. So Rav Baruch just destroyed a part of the apple. No one else will be able to eat that apple. It's being mushed into pulp as we speak, and but that's the way he eats it. So that's a hana'ah and bi'ul shava. So the way they learn the pasuk, when we say lechem, any pleasure you want to get out of the kedushat shvi'it, has to be something that is like achila. Just like achila, you destroy as you enjoy. So too, there will not be kedusha, and you'll know the question here is there kedusha? There will not be kedushat shvi'it in things that you don't destroy as you enjoy.
But I mean, I understand this. One does not cook with wine, Shmita wine.
Okay, that's complicated. Why are you asking that now?
I mean, it seems like, Shmita wines should be drunk, and cooking with it is something, a form of eating. Why that would be a diminishment of it's like a chila.
Wait, shnia. I think you're conflating two different issues. One is what is considered the most efficient level of eating this item, right? That's one issue.
Is it efficient? Is it efficiency or just cover?
So I think the answer is efficiency. In other words, the highest level of use of that wine, right? I don't think the problem with cooking with wine, again, I think here the question would be what wine are you using, right? There is wine that's just cooking wine. The wine you buy in Raim Levi for 18 shekels, I think really is mostly intended as cooking wine. I think you're allowed to cook with Shmita wine like that. I think. I don't want to say halacha l'maaseh here, but it seems to me that wine most people assume will be used for cooking and not for proper consumption, as opposed to better wines that really do need to be drunk properly. But they're b'chol mikra, you're eating it, right? Also, when you add the wine to your sauce, to your roast, whatever you're, right, you are eating the wine. You are drinking the wine. You're just eating the wine. It's not having the purity of the wine, so it's a less efficient. If you have a better word than that, so I'd be happy. But I think it's not going to be very efficient, right? The most efficient use of the wine is drinking it upright and not mixing it with something else. I can see that. Here we're talking about something else. Here we're saying, here it's a different topic. When you don't consume, when you're not drinking, when you're using it for something else, is that use a use that consumes it as you enjoy it?
If you make a salad dressing.
So there too, I think it's the same thing. In other words, the salad dressing, in the end, you don't destroy if you, right, you add some white wine to your vinaigrette, right? For example, right?
Yeah.
And it's Shmita wine. Ultimately, you do consume that Shmita wine.
Mm-hmm.
Elamai, it's not the most efficient consumption. I'm talking not about eating or drinking. I'm talking davka about other uses. For example, here we're talking about cooking, heating, light, right? That's what I'm talking about here. Lumber, right? I'm talking about those uses. Are those uses allowed? And the Gemara says it needs to be such a thing. It needs to be such that as it gets destroyed, you enjoy. For example, the Gemara here differentiates between burning it as a starter for cooking, where you first burn and then you cook, or using it for light, right? If I take a lulav, I don't know if you guys ever burned a lulav, but right, those kinds of leaves, they give a lot of light as you burn them. So the Gemara says, "Haiketim demashchan," the wood that has a lot of that are very oily, light up, right? As they're burned, you enjoy, right? Because they burn as you improve your vision, right? You can see better because they're burning. So that is simultaneous, just like when you chew into that apple. It's the same idea, right? So the Gemara is saying, meaning since most wood is used for hasaka, meaning the Gemara here means hasaka is not heat. the way. Here, the Rashi explains, well, we'll see later on properly, but that we're talking about cooking. Most wood is used for cooking in their days. It's an important point. Most wood is used for cooking. Mimele, all wood has no kedusha. That's the so first step. We learned, we're going to go in the second half of the Gemara in a moment, but when we want to define Gemara up to now, I want to just sum up the Gemara up to now. Gemara up to now, we want to define what is, just this Gemara, we're going to go faster, I think, later on, but this Gemara is very central for many things we're going to learn later. We're going to learn later on the unit, so I really want to make sure we get every point in the Gemara. The Gemara here is asking the question of, is the lulav kadosh or not? The Gemara says, since the lulav is in the group of etzim, most etzim are used for cooking. Mimele, all etzim that are not picked expressly for other uses will not have kedusha. How do I know about expressly for other uses? Because it says over here, liktan le'achila. So liktan le'achila shouldn't be kedushat shvit. If it's not expressly picked for a different use, if it's the stam etzim, will not have kedushat shvit. That's the first step of the first half. Then over here, this Gemara is in Sukkah. The Gemara in Bava Kama is a very powerful. So again, I say very powerful. It's every single word except for two words that are missing here, which say Rav Kahana Amal, where I'm marking over here. Rav Kahana Amal, etzim la'asakat tanai, Tanya, in mosrin pot shvi'it, lo lemishra velo lichvusa. So you'll note, in mosrin pot shvi'it is the question of not does it have kedushat shvi'it, but the question is, I have fruit that has kedushat shvi'it already, for whatever other reason. Are you allowed to use that for your laundry? Are you allowed to use that to wash your clothing or to bathe yourself? So Tanakama says you're not allowed. Rabbi Yossi says you are allowed. Now you'll note, the first half of the Gemara, Rav Kahana says a bit of a shtickle chidush here. The first half of the Gemara said, do these things have kedushat shvi'it? The answer was, well, since they're normally not used in such a way where they're destroyed as they're enjoyed, mimele, they don't have kedushat shvi'it. It says Rav Kahana, this is parallel to the question of something that has kedushat shvi'it, am I allowed to use it for these uses, as soap or laundry detergent? So that's would seem that's a different question. Rav Kahana's chidush is no, it's the same question. If they hold by this idea that hana'a uviul shaveh, that lachem le'ochla means hana'a uviul shaveh, both things apply. Both. There will not be kedusha if it doesn't fit that criteria, and if it has kedusha, it's not allowed to be used for uses that do not fit the criteria. Okay, it goes both ways. So the Gemara explains, my Tama de Tanakama, Rav Kahana explains, my Tama de Tanakama, Da'amarka le'ochla v'lo mishra v'lo le'kvusa. Right? Why does it say le'ochla? To tell me you're only allowed to eat it and not use for other things. My Tama de Rabbi Yossi, Amarka lachem. Lachem l'chol tzorkechem, afilu le'mishra kvusa. Tanakama is focusing on le'ochla, Rabbi Yossi is focusing on lachem. Lachem means any use of yours. Tanakama haktiv lachem. You didn't notice there's another word in the pasuk. Hu lachem dumya del ochla mishanato v'rosh shaveh. Right, the pasuk could have said v'ata shabbat ha'atz lachem, and that's it. V'ata shabbat ha'atz lachem lecha v'lav lecha v'lametecha. Right? Why is the Torah say le'ochla at all? If I have fruit, I'll eat it. Right? If you have lemons, you'll make lemonade. Right? I mean, that's what you do. So what do you get if you have an apple? You'll eat the apple. Why does the Torah have to say lechem le'ochla? To tell me, even when you use it, even as you use it lachem, the main use is achila, and the uses you're allowed to use have to be like, akin to le'ochla, akin to eating. In what sense is it akin to eating? Mishanato v'rosh shava, things that are destroyed as they're enjoyed. Yetzu mishra kvusa shanatan achar biuran. Why? Why are mishra kvusa natan achar biuran? I'll give one possible explanation. We're going to go deeper into this definition later on, but it seems, why is Anatan Achal Bi'uran? Because when I put the laundry detergent on my dirty clothing, what happens to the laundry detergent? It gets dirty, it gets ruined, and then mixes up. And now it's all yucky. But then I'll be able to wash it off, right? So I don't, when do I destroy the laundry detergent? When I put it onto the clothing. When do I enjoy it? When I wash it off. So the destruction happens before the gain. Now, it's true, it's a process, but it's very different from eating. Eating is not a process. As I destroy, I enjoy, right? Every bite I take, I'm enjoying that bite. There aren't two steps where I'm destroying and then enjoy. As opposed to laundry detergent, where when will I enjoy? L'chora, when my shirt is clean. But as I'm administering the soap onto the shirt, the soap is only getting ruined already now. But I'm not gaining anything out of it yet. So, not in the you might say, well, now at least your shirt is soaped up, right? Which is better than just being dirty. True, we'll get back to that point, but just for the moment, suffice it to say, it's not quite like eating, right? Eating is an actual pleasure at the time of destruction, as opposed to the laundry detergent, for example, right? The kvusa. I'm focusing on that for the moment. Kvusa, where I can only perceive true gain when the shirt is clean. If I want to talk about what is the gain, the ultimate gain, similar to eating, right? Beseder. Now, the Tanakama active lachem. Who dumi lachem dumi delochla mishanato v'roshava yatzu mishal kvusa shanatan chal biuran. The pleasure comes after the destruction. Also, after I ruin the soap. Rabbi Yossi active leochla. Rabbi Yossi can't ignore the word leochla. Leochla v'lo limlugma. So I'm not allowed to make bandages out of Shmita fruit. What's the difference between making a bandage and using it for laundry, as a laundry detergent? Either way, it's something that I need for my use. What's the difference? So he says, Tov, on the one hand, lachem, on the other hand, leochla. So I'll say yes to laundry detergent, no to bandages. Okay, fine, but why? So if you want to sum up this whole long paragraph, it says like this. The first thing is the machloket Tanakama and Rabbi Yossi is, they both agree that it says in the pasuk lachem leochla. There's no argument what are the words in the pasuk. Not only there's no argument about what the words in the pasuk are, there's also no argument that lachem implies use that is beyond eating, and leochla implies that even when we refer to use that is beyond eating, it has to be akin to eating. The question is, when I say akin to eating, what does that include? What is the criteria that makes lachem be like leochla? Tanakama's criteria is the more machmir one, and says you're only allowed to use pirot shvi'it for things that are like leochla, in the sense that the pleasure and the destruction are simultaneous. You destroy as you enjoy, or you enjoy as you destroy. That's Tanakama. Rabbi Yossi says the parallel needs to be not that, but something a far lower bar, but shaveh lechol adam, which reminds us of, where else do we have such a criteria? Shaveh lechol nefesh, right? Where do you have shaveh lechol nefesh? On Yantiv, there's such a criteria, right?
Shabbat.
On Yantiv, right? On Yantiv, when you something popped up and distracted me. On Yantiv, when you want to light a fire on Yantiv, you're only allowed to light the fire for things that most people would find useful.
If high-level animal comes into your home on Yontiv and it's of meat that you're not meant to, that not the regular person would eat.
I'm allowed to check that.
I'm allowed to check that because it fits into the category of meat in a general way, even if that
Yes.
particular meat isn't eaten by
Yes.
Kol Nefesh.
So, okay, so I'm going to say another a couple of words about Elon's question. So first of all, I'm allowed to shecht an antelope on Yontiv. Antelopes are kosher, right? I think. Pretty
Yeah.
sure. Right.
Yeah.
I'm allowed to shecht an antelope on Yontiv, right? So you have a muktzah issue that you have to set aside in advance. Set that aside. I'm putting that on the side. But the main, the more important thing to me is the question of what's the difference. How we just said you're only allowed to shech things that are shaveh l'chol nefesh. Yes, meat is shaveh l'chol nefesh. You might say, what about vegetarians? You say, "Tov, they don't have a nefesh." Meat is shaveh l'chol nefesh. And if it's an antelope or something else, that's all right. Because we're going to see later on a similar question. What about just creating more light? Well, you want to read on Yontiv. Are you allowed to add more light in your room by lighting more candles on Yontiv? The answer is yes. But wait, if you want to read, so if someone wants to read a novel, but I want to read K'tzat HaChoshen, they say K'tzat HaChoshen is not Shaveh L'chol Nefesh, right? Most of my neighbors don't read K'tzat HaChoshen in their spare time, right? So is that Shaveh L'chol Nefesh? The answer is reading is Shaveh L'chol Nefesh. Eating is Shaveh L'chol Nefesh. What is not? For example, the Gemara's example is incense. Because that's a kind of pleasure that most people don't bother with. See what I'm saying?
The incense to make your clothes smell nice, right?
Yeah. Yes. That's the Gemara's example. L'chorah would also be true about making your room smell nice. Most people don't bother with that incense either, right? But yeah, the Gemara's example is yours, right? Right, incense to give the clothing an aroma. Most people don't do that. Most people don't bother with that. Mimele, that's not considered shaveh l'chol nefesh, right? So back to us. Rabbi Yossi has the lower bar and says that's the bar, and Tanakama has a higher bar and says it needs to be something where hanato uviro shava. So, and now we have a couple of questions on this Gemara. First of all, why anato uviro shava? What does that even mean? What's the point of anato uviro shava? Why is that a thing? So, is all right. So I want to compare it to eating. So you can think of many comparisons to eating. You can say things you do with your mouth. Say, well, that would be very, very limiting. It wouldn't be right. That'd be too limiting. It'd be all right. So that's not a good criteria. You could think of what about things that make you gain weight? All right, maybe that's only eating, and that wouldn't really add much. But you see what I'm saying? Where does the idea? Why should destruction be part of the criteria? That's really where I'm going, right? Reb Chaim pointed out before, when you're going to start using your Shmita things for all kinds of other uses, that's the diminishment of the kedusha, right? Is that really appropriate? Now I say, wait, but I don't know. Some people were destroying apples here before, right? Right in front of us, right? They say it's not called destroying; it's called eating. We know things of eating as destroying, right? But why is destruction the central aspect of the question of what is kadosh on Shmita, and also the question, right, and also a criteria of what you're allowed to use? Why should that be the central criteria? How you destroy it? That's your question. It's a bit surprising, right? So let's start with that. That's the first question. The second question is the Gemara's leap from here to here. Here, the Gemara's main point here was, or in the first half of the Gemara's main point was that there is no kedushat shvi'it in things that do not fit this criteria. In the second half, the Gemara said things that have kedushat shvi'it can only be used for such uses. This Gemara's assumption that both are on par, that both are the same question, that also requires our our attention. So I want to start with Defco. Want to start with
Rabbi
wanna start with
Bezalel, a
first.
question.
Yes, sure.
Rabbi Bezalel, you
Yes, sure.
use the word distraction.
Yes.
I